Hey guys, it is raining here where I am. Joe, I think it's raining on your side of the world as well. So we might have load shedding. So as you can see, my light is not exactly the best, but this is the kind of world we are living in. We are in supervision for global change. We struggled quite a bit with the name at some point. So I joined you guys late. So I thought I would be the one that actually interviews you and we talk a little bit about what this thing is about. We just got into the end of the year of doing this work. So let's do a little bit of reflection and see what everybody else that's in this group, the LinkedIn and wherever it is that we're going to post these things about this. So I'm going to ask each of you a quick question about your reflections on the year, and then we can talk a little bit about what you expect in the year going forward as well, and then we wrap it up. We won't make it very long. Is that cool?
Right.
Cool. So we'll start with you, Andrew. In this instance, so when I joined the show, let's call it the show, I was a little bit of in a bit of a confusion because I love things, I like things. What is this thing about? What would you say this supervision for global change is about in your idea?
Oh, Mangezi, it's funny because you and I joined at the same time. So, as the two newest people in the group,
Yes,
we're
yes.
really kicking it off. So, for me, what drew me into this was seeing my own experience of supervision and how it's helped me in my own practice, and even wider than that, impacting my wider professional relationships and also my personal relationships. So I got really excited at the idea of being part of something that was had supervision at the heart of it that could bring that positive effect to ever wider circles. So that ripple effect in a pond metaphor comes to mind, and that's
Yeah.
what's got me excited and has kept me here.
Yeah, but that's a lot of words. What does it mean then in short? If somebody who doesn't know what this is about, what would you say?
In short, it's about learning about self through connection.
Sounds nice. David, what about you? You're on mute.
Isn't
Our famous phrase for
yeah,
the year.
isn't it?
What
Isn't
about you?
it the world now? We're on mute. Yeah. Um, I wish more people were on mute. Okay. So why did I get involved? I got involved because Lise asked me. Um, and Lise kind of originally was starting around this idea of okay, looking at supervision and doing a project in kind of out of some work David Gray had done, the late David Gray. But as we kind of got involved more and more in the conversation, it kind of fitted in with other thinking I was doing. So supervision is really important, and it happens a lot in the professional practice. But thinking about, okay, what does it do beyond that? It helps people do better work, and it's kind of hopefully it doesn't do any harm. But what might it do that adds good? What would the value be that is worthwhile? And that kind of, as our conversations kind of developed, we began to think more and more about social change and what social change is needed and the role that supervision may play with that. So, kind of for me, it was about meeting with like-minded people who believe supervision had a role for good in social change, and that's why
Yeah,
I got involved.
sounds amazing. I think Lisa, given that David just mentioned you, what are your thoughts?
Well, thank you, Mongezi. I can repeat some of that because this project was born quite a few years ago, following a discussion I had with the late David Gray about holding a supervision conference in South Africa. And that was a promise I made. Yeah, okay, one day we'll do it. Sadly, David died before we could get off the ground with it, but I've maintained that promise and we got the project started, but it was kind of a really slow burn in terms of, okay, we want to do something with supervision.
Yeah.
Uh, and the thought was around it being in South Africa to hold an event at some stage, hopefully an in-person event, where we could bring together some ideas about what change we could make through supervision.
Yeah.
The first thought was that we would make a change in society. We've been going through quite a few a few. We've been going through some tumultuous times in our world. And we decided, you know what, we want to do something positive about that. And what can we do through supervision that would also support some projects, primarily in South Africa? And then we widened it out and thought, well, why not just widen this out and be global? And what can we do kind of in the world, but still having that focus on South Africa? So for me, it means promoting the benefits of supervision, doing it in memory of a great person, engaging other people into this project, and getting some energy and enthusiasm and motivation around what can we do with supervision, where will it take us, and what changes we can make.
Yeah, I like that phrase because I think it connects. It connects. What change can we do with supervision? Which sounds like a nice summary of what we've been keeping ourselves busy with. Joe, what do you have to say?
Well, I got involved when Lise reached out to a number, I think, of South African supervisors about the conference, and I don't think there was much response until I reached out to Lise and said, "Be happy to be involved, but I do not like conferences. If we can have it more of a kind of an engaged, interactive process, then I would be keen to be a part of it." Which is what, in a way, it's evolved to this the commitment to the group, to the process, and also that I guess my belief in and my passion for supervision in its power to be able to transform relationships, and so and that idea that change starts with self. Rather than doing something to others. So for me, the fact that I also, like Rob and Show, I believe everybody needs a supervisor, the power of reflective practice and the possibility that the process of supervision can create such significant change.
Cool.
And the group. I guess I've stayed involved because of my commitment to the group and to the process.
You like us. You like us. You like us. I do. And one of the things I've enjoyed, Joe, is how I would forget to show up, and then I would definitely get a message from you. Are you coming through? And I want to stick with you for 2 seconds before I come into you to you, Alex. Being in South Africa and with the whole thing starting with South Africa as a core, what did you think it could do for South Africa if we got it right?
Well, I mean, I think there's immense potential for South Africa and the world, but I think that we are still recovering as a country from the history of apartheid discrimination. And so I think there's huge potential for us to heal relationships in this country through the process of supervision, that kind of real transformation that we take responsibility for ourselves and other in relationship.
Love that. I love the healing piece. Alex, what about you?
I echo what Joe's just said. What I wanted to start with was, I think in supervision, we look at context and patterns that emerge, how we're all connected somehow. And to me, that speaks to the social nature that we consider in supervision and that we, I think, aim to make a difference to. My wish for South Africa in the project, I think it's to help people calibrate their understanding of supervision and see that it really has enormous potential to bring value not only to themselves as practitioners, but to their clients and wider society. This is just my personal experience, not necessarily how it exactly is, but I have felt a bit of a resistance to supervision in the South African coaching market. And my wish is to transform the perspective of that by giving people transparency and insight into what we do as supervisors, who we are, and about the process and its impact.
Yeah. I think that's a great segue, actually. I mean, when you talk about the regard for the practice of supervision in South Africa, I think my research through the ABCCP actually showed that it's much more than than South Africa. I think I was saying to David as we were reflecting that actually, and I'm quite provocative about this for most of the year, coaches don't like supervision. Coaches avoid supervision if they can help it. And perhaps one of the pieces of work that we need to do at some point is to figure out why is this the issue. But maybe while I have you on the line, let's move on to this next part of the conversation. So how do you think we've done, Alex, so far?
Yeah. I want to start by saying I think we're doing well now. And as a person who inherently comes with high expectations, I felt some frustration with our group process at the beginning. I had expectations that it would run more smoothly. And I know that's typical of me as a person. So it's taken me some effort to, I think, detach from the expectation and just be part of an emergent process. And I can see a very strong parallel between that and how supervision goes. It is really about meeting the client where the client is, about seeing what emerges and working with that. There's no specific exact structure for how supervision has to go. So I like this process, this opportunity to just do that reflection and see that parallel.
Yeah. So it goes back to Andrew's initial definition about this work. Andrew, it sounds like then, with Alex saying this, you are actually getting exactly what you thought it would be like.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the maybe careful what you wish for. It's for my own journey. Accepting the invitation coming into the space was also at a time of me learning how to let go of some of my own gremlins and be okay in a group process. And it's been magical. At times a bit disjointed, sometimes a bit rough, but every time things get resolved and there's a good laugh and I feel closer and more understood, both by myself and with others every time within this group.
Yeah. What about you, Joe? How do you think we've done?
I agree we're doing well. I think that we did. I mean, I think what I reflect on is I feel we're being true to the process.
Yeah.
And so for me, certainly, for a number of years, my kind of ongoing personal and professional development has been not new content. That's why my resistance is to conferences and being spoken at, is to deepen my relationship with peers. So really to sit with the challenge that sometimes that creates, and with the conflict and with the discomfort, but is to stick to the process and deepen those relationships. And I think through that willingness to sit with the difference and the discomfort is how we will create ultimate transformation through relationship.
Yeah.
So even though we've had some disappointment in terms of numbers and uptake, I believe that it's not linear.
Yes.
And that what we're doing is really true to the process.
Yeah, we are essentially the research of exactly the work we're trying to do, right? Because I think what I'm learning already from this is usually when we are trying to do big change, the impatience is always around something magical is going to happen all of a sudden. But there's all of this frustration and having to draw people and having to really wait. It's almost like the universe is testing you. Do you really want this? So in terms of drawing people in, David, how do you think, what are some of your thoughts and obviously reflections on how we are doing?
Yeah. Okay. We started with a fairly specific assumption that we were going to create this conference.
Yes.
And fairly quickly, we moved away from that into a much more emergent process. Having moved into an emergent process, I was not surprised either by slowness and then fast and then slow and then people come in, then people are not coming, because that's how those sort of processes work. Who is present at any session is the people who need to be present at that session. both for them and the process. So we've had some interesting sessions. We've made 3 offers out there. We've made one which was primarily to people who are coaches or wanted to think about supervision in South Africa. That had pretty reasonable attendance, but it was clear from that there was a lot of misunderstanding around supervision in South Africa, and kind of that led us to think, okay, let's think more broadly. The next offer we made had a very high level of people who came, who wanted to talk about supervision for social change. We got a lot of really interesting input out of that, which led us to make some decisions about how we would go forward. The third offer we made was, the numbers were disappointing, but the quality of the conversation was actually very high. The people who were present had a lot of interesting things to say. And so, you know, they were clearly the people who needed to be there in that process. And I think that again led us on to think about, okay, how do we take this forward? And we began to think about maybe putting some videos together, maybe putting some stuff around supervision, triangle, etc., which we're going to go on and do subsequently. So yes, it's been kind of a lot of movement, but actually I think it's been useful movement. And it's in each one, even though the numbers are varied, has taught us something, or we've learned something new.
Yeah, sounds great. I think it sounds like we have a whole nice study around social change processes, and we already are holding that as an example, perhaps as input for the new year. Lisa, with you sharing perhaps your reflections, but maybe segueing into, so what now?
Okay, so first of all, Mongezi, I'd like to reflect on what you said about coaches avoiding supervision.
Yes.
Quite a wide sweeping statement, which isn't entirely in my own experience, but I do know it exists. So I just wanted to balance that a little bit, if that's if that's all right.
Go ahead.
My thoughts about the process have been, and the experience have been, yes, we started off with a lot of energy. This is what we want to do, kind of predicting how it might work, but without kind of wanting to place our expectations on others. And I think we drew back from that maybe a bit too much in terms of wanting it to be free, in terms of people just being there if they want to be there. Let's co-create the process, let's co-create the dialogue, and people will become engaged in areas and themes that they were really interested in. So the first meeting that blew that right out of the water in terms of people not really, in fairness, wanting to have something a bit more prescriptive about, this is what supervision is, this is how it appeared to us anyway. And then we had a great second session in terms of lots of people came, and there were lots of enthusiasm about projects. But again, without going into too much detail, it was about, we needed to recalibrate, I think, and see where we were going, and maybe be a bit more managing people's expectations of what they expected of us as a group. We wanted to integrate with the whole, not be kind of the facilitators of this project, because it was a co-creation, as I say. And well, it is emergent. We are where we are, and I can only concur with everything that's been said, except for the supervision comment, Mongezi. Yeah, let's just see where it takes us. We're enthusiastic. We want to share that enthusiasm with as many people as we can, and we hope that, you know, our wish is that the dialogue continues. And so on that note, I'll say, so what next? And I'll start with you, Mongezi, because you've hosted us beautifully. So what's next?
Well, maybe before I go, because I will wrap up. I will wrap up with my own answers around this. But maybe with each, to start wrapping it up, what is your invitation? Because I think you just wrapped it up very nicely there. So as we wrap up the year and we are sitting here reflecting, what would be your invitation specifically to people who are watching right now?
Okay, my invitation would be, I think, in terms of an open invitation to people who want to engage with this conversation about supervision for social change to do so. I agree with Lise that we've thought, well, let's put some more structures in. So one of the things we're doing is actually producing a series on the supervision triangle. And we're going to put that out and invite people to comment on that and get engaged with that. So the invitation is there, make it available, and actually then engage with those who want to engage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Andrew?
Yeah, from my side, it's the keep your eyes open, come and have a conversation with us, be curious about what's coming up next, and if you don't see anything, come and poke us and ask.
Yes.
Be good to have your voices here.
Alex?
For me, this is about supervision for global change, and that encompasses social change. It encompasses global issues like climate, economy, politics, warfare, you name it. And I invite people to have a look at our LinkedIn group.
Yeah.
Check out our webpage. I'm sure we'll provide some links. And if you're interested in the wider impact of your work as a coach or as a supervisor, and on the impact of the wider context on your work, pay us a visit.
Yeah. Joe?
I don't have anything to add to what my colleagues have said. I agree. I think it's an open invitation to engage with us. We didn't want to necessarily be, the drivers, although that is really what we have been. So, but we are inviting people, I guess, to be courageous and step us and join us as we change the world.
Yeah. And it's not an easy thing, right? I really admire the kind of work. When I came in, I was going, oh, this sounds really exciting. I want to be a part of it. And I think, fortunately or unfortunately, I wasn't expecting really too much with my understanding of the work of Wilfred Bion and how organizations just take such a long time. And I'm so glad that we've gone through this study for ourselves first, because then it means we are not going to be so frustrated working with that conundrum around having to hold versus having to let go. Hold, let go. That's what governments are struggling with, isn't it? That's what leaders are struggling with everywhere. But I think for me, my invitation as far as this work is concerned is we've kicked this thing off. It takes a few people to kick it off. But what's really important here is to understand that this is not about supervision. This is about supervision for global social change or global change in general. So the expectation or the first level here is you understand what supervision is about and you know what it's supposed to be doing. So we're not having debates about supervision, really. We can, if that's important for you. However, that's not really what the real work is about. The real work here is how do we use this to actually bring the change that the world requires? And I, for one, am looking forward to what it's going to become. So join us in the new year as we create more of what we try to create in this year. Thank you.